In this video, I will teach you everything there is to know about Notion in under 10 minutes. If you clicked on this video, chances are that you want to organize your life in Notion, but are overwhelmed by all the options the app gives you. I felt the exact same way when I first downloaded the app, but after 3 years of using it, I realized that Notion actually isn't that complicated. You just need the right explanation. With this video, I will provide you with this explanation so that by the end of it, you will be able to take your Notion space from this to this and organize your life properly. To understand Notion, you first need to know that the app is made out of pages, each page representing a different workspace, so to say. You can have pages within pages and even have databases within those pages, which we will get to later. The best way to visualize this is by looking at the path bar. As you can see, this page is located in this page and so on. So now that we know how Notion is built, let's look at the overall layout of Notion. On the left side of the window, you will find a navigation bar with all your different pages. So when you first open the app, this is where you select in what page you will be working. We can also hide this section by clicking on this button here or using the shortcut command \. At the top of the window, we have the path bar, which we talked about earlier, but we also have a plus button, which we can use to create a new tab. This allows you to have multiple workspaces opened at once so that you don't have to constantly switch back and forth when you're working into workspaces. In the top right of this window, we have the star icon, which we can use to favorite this space, and this page will then be added to the navigation section here. And when we click on the 3 little dots, we will be presented with a ton of customization options for our pages. I always like to set my page to full width here, which utilizes the space of the window a bit better, but that's up to personal preference. You could also change the font of the workspace here, but I've got mine set to default as it's the best readable font available. Okay, so now that we have a pretty clear understanding of how the app works, let's actually create a workspace. Each page is built out of different blocks, which we can move around freely, and we can create a new text block by just hitting enter. But if you want to create something like a text box block, we need to hit enter and then type /. You will now be presented with a bunch of block options. I have divided these blocks into 3 sections: the typography section, the media section, and databases. Typography blocks are blocks that are essentially just static text in different forms and fonts. There are different sized headings, checkboxes, and different types of lists, for example. These can all be used to present your text in a more aesthetic and visually appealing way, but if you really want to make your text stand out from the rest, I would recommend using the quote and the callout blocks. I use these all the time when taking notes in college, and you can even customize the callout block with different colors and icons. There's also a divider block, which I use to create different sections in my pages. I know this technically isn't a text block, but I still wanted to include it in this category as it enhances the look of your space. By the way, you don't have to scroll through this list each time you want to create a new block. After you've typed /, you can just type out the block you're looking for and hit enter to create it. Moving on to the media blocks, these are all blocks with content in them that aren't text or databases, so to say. So that's your images, videos, files, etc. And I've also attributed pages to this category. So yes, if you want to create a page within a page like we talked about earlier, simply type /page and hit enter to create it. From there, you can just give it a name and go back to your main page by using the path bar. And as you can see, the page that we just created shows up here. Tables are also in this category, and these are essentially really basic Excel spreadsheets. These just have a horizontal and vertical column in which you can't do any crazy stuff like formulas and such. If you want to get crazy with formulas and categories and that stuff, you have to create a database. But before we dive into how databases work and how you can use them, I quickly wanted to say that regardless of whether or not you know how Notion works, it will take a lot of time to build these extensive workspaces. So if you want to skip that hustle, you could also use templates. I have created a free Notion starter kit, which includes a dashboard, a task manager, a goal tracker, and a habit tracker, which I will leave a link to in the description down below. Now, of course, knowing how to use Notion is still a super valuable skill even when you use templates, because you will be able to tailor these templates exactly to your needs. So keep on watching, because we're getting into the most exciting part of Notion: databases. Databases are essentially spreadsheets with a ton of customizable features. Each horizontal row in such a database is a single page, and each vertical row is called a property. So pages that are located in these databases are a little different from regular pages because you can organize them with these properties. database. There are a ton of different properties, so let's go over them while creating a little task manager. To create a new database, type /database and you will be presented with a ton of database options. I would always recommend going with an inline database, as that will create a table view database within the page you're already working in. You could also select a full page database that will create a page with a database inside it. But for now, let's create an inline database. When you first create a database, it will already have two properties. It will have a name property and it will have a tags property. The names property represents the names of the pages inside of the database. So we'll be writing down the names of our tasks here. With the tags property, we can create different tags for our tasks, like business, personal, and household. This will help a lot when we are filtering our databases, which I will get to in a bit. Our task manager, of course, also has to allow us to set a deadline for our task. We can do this by clicking on the plus button here to create a new property and then select the date option. Now we can simply click here and select a date from the calendar to set a deadline for our task. We also need to create a property which resembles whether or not we have done a certain task. There are two properties which can be used for this. We could do this with the checkbox property, which allows us to mark our tasks as done, or we can do this with the status property, which lets us mark our tasks with different statuses in three categories: the to-do category, the in progress category, and the done category. I'm gonna go with the status property here, as it will give us a bit more freedom when working in this workspace. There are also a ton of other different properties, like the numbers property, which lets you type out numbers in a certain format, and the email property, which lets you link email addresses. But the ones that we use in this database are the ones that you will find yourself using most. Now, having a list view of our task manager like this is great, but we can also format our databases differently by creating a new view. If we click here, we are presented with 6 different views we can pick from: the table, the board, the timeline, the calendar, the list, and the gallery views. These views are essentially the exact same as our task manager, but they just present the information differently. One view I always like to use for databases with a status property is the board view, so let's select that one. This view allows us to drag our tasks through different statuses, which looks really nice. We can also give this view a name, so let's just name it board view for now. And if we click on the 3 little dots here and select properties, we can determine which properties will be shown in this view. And this is completely separate from our main view, so if we keep the tags property hidden here, for example, it will still show up in the main view. You can probably imagine though that after we've added and completed a bunch of tasks in this task manager, it can get quite messy. So that's why we want to apply a filter to this view. To do that, you want to hover over this part here and click on filter. Now you will be presented with a bunch of filter options, but I would always recommend selecting the advanced filter button. I want to create a filter that hides all of our completed tasks that have a deadline that's older than a week. So to do that, we are going to create a filter that says status is not complete, because we want all our non-complete tasks to still show up here, and create a new filter rule that says date is after 1 week ago. Also make sure that it says and here, so that the pages must match with both filters. To make our database even more organized, we can also add a sort. For this database, I would like the pages to be sorted by date and by tag. So let's create a new sort by clicking here and selecting date. And to add another sort, we can click on add sort and select the tags property. Sorts actually work in a hierarchical order, so the date sort is prioritized over the tag sort here, if that makes sense. Now that's everything there really is to creating our database. However, we can make it a little more static by doing 2 things. First, we can add a cover to it. I personally love to use a plans cover from Unsplash. And secondly, we can add an icon to the page. I always use Notion's own icons here, but you could also use an emoji, for example. And now you should be able to get to work in Notion. I'm also planning to create more of these Notion tutorials, so make sure to subscribe if you don't want to miss out on those. I hope to see you soon. Bye!